So with speaking of the EBS earlier, what's I know we were talking about Dave Wilcock earlier, and he was talking about it last year, and everybody was getting really excited, and they gave him a lot of crap because it didn't happen, and it's not his fault, like he's just kind of
Yeah,
a
I
guy
know.
with inside information, and I think a lot of people give people a lot of crap, you know, perhaps not intentionally, but quite undeservingly, I think at times as well, because you know nobody really knows what's going to happen. Probably like a handful
No.
of people really know exactly what's happening, and people like you and psychics and people with other information do their best to give people the information that you know that may or may not happen straight away.
Mm.
But what do you see coming down the pipeline, if at all, with anything with the EBS?
So
And what would be
when
the
I get,
purpose of that too? Because if it's already
yeah,
kind of going to fizzle
exactly.
out, then what would be the
Yeah. So whenever I've looked into the emergency broadcast system, they've always told me that it won't be necessary because the way that they're going to unravel everything is in a very gentle, calm way. So then there's not going to be a need for some dramatic broadcast. So I'm not saying that that might not change in the future, but if we look at the way that things are going this year, it has all slowed down, and it's now sort of unraveling in a very gentle way with little snippets of boats getting stuck and the media
yeah
letting little stories out here and there, and you can kind of see how it's gently unraveling rather than this big shock to the system.
yeah
So I'm not saying that there won't ever be an emergency broadcast service, but I just think what will happen actually is that over a period of time, the white hats who are already in the mainstream media will just start releasing more and more stories that will start to tell the truth. So
okay
instead of like a big abrupt broadcast, I think it will just gradually start to turn around. That the storylines will start to turn around. We've seen some of that happening already.
yeah
So it'd be like a
definitely
more gentle awakening rather than a big shock.
yeah
That's how I feel it might go.
I think it's probably best. I can imagine. Well, there's so much to release that you can't just release it all in a. You'd be there for months, right? You'd be there for years, probably watching this thing. But you
You
know,
would. You
yeah,
would. It would be like a soap opera. It would be going
yeah.
on for so long.
And now season 10. They could make however many movies about it.
Yeah, it'll be on Netflix as a box set. You're
Yeah,
quite right.
yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
But they need to know enough.
maybe.
I think they need to know enough. Like because we can't really move forward if most people don't know. We can't. It will happen again. And actually, I don't think it's going to happen again because of what I think has happened, behind the scenes in terms of takedowns and arrests and things like that. I don't think it's going to happen again on that level, but it could happen again. You know what I mean? Like if we don't learn our lesson. So theoretically, it could happen again. So I think what you said is very true because in Australia we're seeing a lot of stuff about the shot, the inoculation here, and how a few different some bad reactions and how it's being delayed and all these things and like there's blood clots and all that stuff and I just don't think that if the black hats were in control we'd be seeing any of that at all, for one. And two, I think every country is going to have its own kind of disclosure in and of itself. I'm sure maybe you're seeing
Yes.
things in the UK. We've got some stuff that's coming into Australia about the parliament here that I told you about a few
Yes.
weeks ago. And
That's another reason why I didn't think that EBS would work, because
yeah,
you'd be trying to give out a blanket message to lots of different cultures, lots of different countries, when it's affecting different places in different ways. So to me, what you've just said makes a lot of sense. It would make more sense to me that each country handles the way it brings things out into the light in the way that they know that their country can manage it, and dependent on what they need to know within each continent, because
mhm,
what you need to know in Australia, I don't necessarily need to know in the UK about, the ins and outs of your government, but I do really
yeah,
need to know about the ins and outs of my government.
exactly.
So
Yeah,
it wouldn't really make sense to me to have one big broadcast. It would be better to work with the countries individually and start releasing information in a way that each country can understand.
Yeah,
Does-
because I heard, I don't know who said this. It might have been Janine, but I heard that some countries are actually starting to release things on their media about some things that most people would call conspiracy theories, you know,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
it's coming out as if it's common knowledge now, and
yeah,
it's just the beginning, I think. So what I think most people want to see the EBS just for the fact that they want to see the lies that are in the world right now. They want to see that exposed, the experience that we've had over the last 12 months, 13 months. They want to see that exposed, and I think that, you know, rightly so. But I think
So
when
EBS stands for emergency broadcast. So I think that is in place in case something dramatic happens where it's an emergency.
yeah,
Okay, which is what it suggests, emergency broadcast. So let's imagine that, for instance, there was some disaster going to hit the whole of the world. I think there might be a system in place if they had to get a very urgent and quick message out to people.
yeah, exactly.
But in the way that we're currently unraveling this storyline, I don't see that there's a need for it. So I think there might be something called an emergency broadcast system somewhere, but I think that would be there at any time, whatever
In any
was going
case,
on
yeah,
with
for
the
sure.
world, because
Yeah.
I'm sure that governments have got some system in place for any event at any time, regardless of what's going on right now, just so they could warn the population to get inside or whatever they need to do. So I don't think it's going to be needed. I think that the mainstream media will have to capitulate over a period of time. And I think that the white hats are already in there doing that, as we've said, and that as time rolls on, more and more of the truth will just come out. And some of those organizations, if they're not willing to do what the white hats want, they probably would just be closed down. And of course, we do have this in the background. We have, well, I've been told that President Trump and some people like Elon Musk and Julian Assange are probably working on this new broadcasting system anyway, this new TV and internet.
Okay.
So, rather than having an emergency broadcast system, I see it more that we're just going to have a new network that we can possibly link into that Trump is developing. So a new internet, new TV, which is only going to produce the truth. So I see it more in a positive way that we're going to have a new system completely, but it's not necessarily going to be an emergency broadcast.
Do you think then that, so the mainstream medias that don't, let's say, play ball are going to be defunct? So the ones that do will allowed to continue to operate and stuff like that, because that's the only, we can't be having the lies being pushed out there consistently. And also I don't watch the news. I never really have, but I don't want to, if I did watch news, I don't want to turn on the news and see carjackings and murders and fires and all the crap that they put on there. I want to see positive news, like I want to see how many people got rescued or how many animals got rescued, or, you know what I mean? Like I want to see things like heartwarming stories.
Well, I think once the truth gets out to everybody, they're not going to want to watch it. Once they they have it explained to them what's been going on, that people have been managing the news behind the scenes that aren't doing it for our own good, then hopefully they're going to make that decision on their own. You see, I think the
people are addicted
behind
to that,
all
though.
of this. Sorry?
Unfortunately, a lot of people are addicted to certain things like that and they don't know it.
But I think that the whole spiritual plan right now is that people have to do this under their own steam, because if you come in and try to force people to do anything, you're actually going against something called divine will. So in basic terms, that means you could be creating karma if you try to make people do something when they're not ready to do it. So an example might be, if you're a healer and you try to make someone better and you think you're doing good, but actually the person who's not well might be learning a lesson from having that illness. They might be learning something, might be learning patience. They might be learning compassion. They might be learning how to look at other people with more empathy. And if you then rushed in and took that away from them, then you've forfeited their chance to learn a lesson. You've
Exactly.
forfeited,
Yeah.
you've stopped them from having an opportunity to learn more compassion and empathy. So sometimes it's not a good idea to try and force things upon people. And I think the spiritual world that we're in right now is that people have to do this on their own. They have to learn to be sovereign beings.
Hmm.
They have to learn to look for this information on their own. And the problem we've got at the moment is that people don't realize they have to be looking for anything. But in the future, that will change as more and more things, as you said, start to turn around and they start to see conflicting stories on the mainstream media, and eventually they'll be seeing more conflicting stories than they're used to, and that will start to create within them a questioning, and then they're doing it on their own. So it's not for President Trump, it's not for a government, it's not for an EBS to tell people this is how you've got to think or be. So I think the way that they're doing it at the moment, this kind of gradual unraveling, is on a spiritual level, is a much better way of doing it, rather than these abrupt and these emergency type ideas that we've had before.
Yeah. After all, looking for somebody else for ideas and ways of thinking is what got us into this mess in the first place. So
yes, if you're always looking outside of yourself for answers, you're not learning how to listen to your intuition. And as we go into the fifth dimension as Earth, we need to be using our own navigation system. Like you said, we've got to learn not to keep looking towards the government for answers. So in the new world, we will all work on our own intuition and our telepathy and the connections that we make with people, rather than looking at a box in the corner of the room and expecting that to tell us what to do. We'll be going from our own intuitive direction. So that's what they're trying to achieve. So that's why things have gone seemingly quiet right now, because we got led at quite a fast pace to January, and we got quite excited, and then it seemed like the lights went out, and we kind of all feel like, oh, well, hello, what's going on now? And that's because people are being given the opportunity now to say, well, yeah, what is going on now? What's happening? They're not being led anymore. They're being given the opportunity to take the next step on their own, to ask the relevant questions and to develop further.
Yeah, I always, one of the shows I did recently, we talked about the dates that keep coming and going and nothing really seems to happen. And I just kind of thought, well, you can take those at face value or whatever, however you want to choose to take them. But I think at the very core of the lesson behind those dates is really, don't wait for a savior. Don't, because that people are saying, oh, we'll have to wait to this day and this day, and then it keeps pushed down the road. But it's not how we should be thinking. We should never be waiting. We should always be doing, go to a rally, whatever it is, make a video. I don't know, do something. Don't
do the inner work. Go within.
At the very least,
you're exactly
learn
right.
how to trust yourself, because if everybody trusted themselves, we wouldn't be in this mess either.
And also, because I talked to the Galactic Federation of Light, what they told me right at the beginning of all of this crisis last year was that they're waiting for the collective consciousness to be at a certain level. It goes back to what we were saying earlier, I think before we went live, that you don't give, when someone's just passed their driving test, you don't give them a Lamborghini to go and drive down the road in, because they don't have the experience to manage it yet. So we're going into a new world, which is like a Lamborghini. So you've got to have the right level of consciousness collectively for people to be able to manage that Lamborghini. So what we're waiting on is for the collective light to get to a certain level. At the moment, it's between 45 and 50%. And ideally, we want it at about 60%. So when we feel like we're in the dark, what's actually happening is it's helping people to reach within, to do the inner work. And whenever people do inner work, it helps to raise up their vibration, because as soon as they start asking questions like, what's all this about? What's going on? That's them prompting themselves to get more information from a source that isn't in the corner of the room in a box, but actually them delving inside and feeling what's right for them. And that's how we raise the consciousness. Once we then get to this sort of 60% level as a collective around the earth, then, you know, it will just all start to roll out again. So we're nearly there, actually. And we feel like people aren't waking up, but I think that
They
there's a
are.
lot more people awake than we realize. Yeah, I
I
think
would
there has
agree.
been a lot of progress, a lot of progress.
And we'll get to that point where it just goes exponential eventually. Like, you know,
Exactly.
eventually it
Yeah.
will. And
Yeah. And that might be why we had this sudden change of what looked like a change of timeline and dates shifting, because dates are man-made.
exactly.
And
Yeah.
what might have happened was, after that December big influx of light that we had, the solar flash, it's possible that we had such a big awakening that, you know, collectively, that they then changed the plan. They didn't need to do the old things that they had in mind, because
Mhm.
they could now see that the collective was rising up on its own. And so
Yeah.
they just wanted it to continue, like you said, so that exponentially over time it would do it for itself without anyone having to intervene. So again, I think a bit like where we've had Biden in office for these months, and we've kind of thought, what's going on?
Mm.
It's actually served a good purpose, because while everyone's been looking at Biden, we've been able to get a lot of things done behind the scenes. And so I think with a lot of these things, it's better to look at what's been going on with people collectively than be worrying about certain timelines and certain visuals.